Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Seneca Waugh with your Clear Next Step, and we are here on Friday Connections. It is Friday, June 12th, 2020. And as we think about our connections, right, the purpose of this conversation is for us to have an opportunity to get together on a Friday, right, when things are a little bit more uplifted because we've got the weekend ahead of us and we're in that home stretch for the work week. And an opportunity to connect with others. So many of us are still socially distanced and still not able to connect with others. So it's nice to have a chance to connect with and engage with others even through the Zoom platform. It's informal, so I share some remarks, but then we have a chance to connect with each other and to build relationships, which is so important and part of what I had always hoped would happen out of these Friday connections. And this is all part of the Your Clear Next Step mission to help us all have better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities. Well, speaking of co-creating better communities, the topic that I want to visit about today has to do with co-creating these better moments of social etiquette and of workplace and human interaction etiquette. Like there's some tactical stuff we're going to need to figure out over these next few weeks as doors continue to open, people continue to venture outside of their homes. I was in a conversation, I was in an event that was outdoors yesterday, socially distanced appropriately, but was more people than I had been in presence with. And sort of, I jokingly said, y'all are the first people I've seen since March 19th. And I was only half joking, right? Because some of us are experiencing that, right? We're coming out of our houses for the first time and starting to see those things that are opening and participate. And there's so much going on. There's so much baggage. There's so much noise. There's so much distraction that we've been through so much over these last few weeks. And then with the shift of our focus from the pandemic to racial justice and the conversations that are going on about that, there's just definitely right now a lot of opportunity for us to be more careful, for us to be more sensitive, for us to be more intentional about communicating our needs and about listening to someone else's needs. So as we think about these social etiquette sort of situations, the ones that are going to crop up the soonest, there's a handful that I think are top of mind. The first one is like the meeting with someone. You want to connect with someone and you're trying to figure out, are we meeting in person yet, or are we still Zooming? Are we meeting in person or Zoom? And how do you ask that? So that's one of the questions to consider is how do you find out from someone else? Are they ready for that? Are they ready for that conversation to be face-to-face? Are they ready for a physical meeting, or are they still preferring Zoom? We certainly don't want to barrel into a conversation presuming that we know what they want. Right? We need to be respectful. We need to ask. Maybe perhaps making the invitation. If you're open to it, I'm happy to meet face-to-face if you're ready and you don't know if they are. I think we definitely want to avoid places where we say, well, I'm ready to meet in person. You are too, right? Or we presume what the other person is going to be thinking or feeling. So the meeting in person, we got to connect with someone. And how do you ask? Would you like to meet in person? Are you ready for that? How do you ask that in a way that's not off-putting, that's not presumptuous, that's not discouraging, or that doesn't come across as disdainful in any way? So I think masks or no masks is going to be one of those questions that we've got to figure out. I had an opportunity just the other day here in the neighborhood. There was a neighborhood meeting, and so we were meeting outside, or some families were meeting outside. And one of the parents wanted to leave her kids with one of the teenagers in the neighborhood so that they didn't have to bring kids to the meeting. And could we do that? And so as we were trying to figure out, can my kids babysit yours, and what does that look like? So I just went ahead and used the phrase in the text. We were exchanging all this by text. And I said, awkward question, how are you handling social distancing? Right? So I prefaced it with the idea that awkward question coming. And I think even in our even in our face-to-face conversations and our verbal conversations and our phone calls and our emails, I think we're going to have to give some space to, hey, this is awkward. This is uncomfortable. Maybe poke a little fun at it. Awkward question coming. What are you doing about social distancing? How are you handling that? Are you wearing a mask? Are you not wearing a mask? Do you mind if I wear mine? I think getting our heads around that is going to be interesting. Handshakes. So handshakes used to be a thing. They used to be a sign of respect. They used to be a way to build relationships. And we don't even go so far as hugging, because I know that created responses of other forms among non-huggers of the world. I get that. I was raised a hugger, and so it's hard to help, but I can detect when the person I'm talking to is not a hugger. But even handshakes, I think those are a thing of the past for many, and I think they are not a thing of the past for many. And I think we're going to have to figure out, if someone goes in for a handshake, what do you do? Do you flick and rub your hand by your ear and like psych? Do you back off? Do you panic? Do you say, wait, do you have Germex? So we're going to have to figure out, what does that do? Do you bump your elbow first? You see them coming in and you put your elbow bump? What do we do with that? I think handshakes is going to be interesting. Communicating your personal space. How much space do you need? How much, what are you comfortable with? And so for example, I've done some of the research and some of the study into sort of the aerosolization and how far are the social distance, why they said 6 feet. It's because a normal person, so you breathe and you talk, and your air particles and your aerosolized particles go about 3 feet, and the other person's go about 3 feet in a normal conversation. So at 6 feet, we're gonna touch each other. But in singing, so I am a vocalist, and in singing, you're actually projecting those same aerosolized particles are going up to 27 feet, right? Is what one of the studies said. Up to 27 feet that's traveling. Well, that's for singing, and normal talking for a normal person is 3 feet. What about those people who are loudmouths right here, right? What about people who are naturally projecting? When I talk out loud, I'm speaking from my diaphragm. I'm using the same vocalization energy that I use when I'm singing. I'm projecting further. For your safety, I want to keep further space, right? And so how do we do that? Or what if we're talking to someone who doesn't know that? They're someone who projects, they have a naturally projecting voice, and or maybe they are a vocalist or a singer, and they're projecting louder, and you want to step back. How do you do that without being offensive, right? How do you protect your space? There was a couple of months ago already, there was a bar somewhere that had a Facebook post, and it showed this really super great idea where as you arrived at the bar, you sort of ducked under a table and you came up in the middle of the table, and you walked around literally in this 6 foot round table with wheels on it and bumpers. And you walk around, it's like bumper tables, and you still walk, but you have this table service for your beer or your snacks or whatever. And you walk around, and you can't get any closer to anybody because they're also all walking around in these 6 foot tables. What a great idea. But we can't take those to the workplaces, I don't think. I look around in this office, and we can't fit more than 1 or 2 in our office. So what do you do if you don't have the 6 foot bumper table? How do you communicate how much personal space you need? So how about the next one? Participating in a group situation. Maybe you've stretched out and put yourself. Maybe it's you having this experience, or maybe you're already comfortable, but someone else has joined the group, right? So we'll think about the lens of that other person for a sec. So a group is comfortable. Maybe they're next door neighbors, and they know that they've social distanced with everybody but each other, and so it's or their family, and they've been really, really careful, or they live in the same household, and so they're comfortable and they're doing things. But now someone has been invited over, or someone is nearby. How do you get that other person to feel comfortable or to feel included? The thing that I was at last night, there was an opportunity to, we had a big circle of chairs outdoors, and there was an opportunity to move in because there were fewer bugs in, and several of us were like, nope, sorry, not coming in, even though it's an open barn sort of situation, we're still not going in, or to move in closer to the circle and have that more intimate conversation as night falls and our conversation needs to get quieter. But how do you do that when the people around are not necessarily comfortable with that? So there's going to be this balance between separating yourself from those situations. Like some people will be tempted to just say, I'm just not going because I don't know how to have that awkward. But I think we'll also need to, as hosts or as participants in things like that, when we start to see that, we need to be aware of what's going on and how do we make people feel comfortable, and can we help raise conversations where someone else might feel awkward, and we need to help them not feel awkward and still feel safe. Again, without judgment, not judging people who are like, well, yes, we'll just hug because we've been hugging the whole time, and not judging people who are like, no, thank you, because we don't know. They may have someone who is at risk at their household, and they're still being extra careful. And I think that's okay. We shouldn't judge people for that. So then we're going to get into that real situation of when someone does something that you're not comfortable with. So perhaps you were engaged in a conversation and you thought it was all fine, and then they leaned over and they probably didn't grab your coffee spoon and stir their coffee with it. I mean, probably not. Most of us haven't done that in many social circumstances, but they may have done something that made you uncomfortable. Maybe they coughed and didn't or sneezed and didn't use Germ-X, or maybe I don't know what it is. We had someone come to our door and they came right in the door. Like, whoa, what happens? Like that's uncomfortable. I wasn't prepared for someone to come into the house. What do? How do you make sure that you're still not brewing this discomfort and not brewing this dissatisfaction, but also not letting it out in a way that is destructive, but be sharing it in a way that is helpful and uplifting and perhaps informative. And then I think for the time being, we are still going to continue to have Zoom meetings. I think Zoom doesn't go away for a bit. And even as we hear about places where you can choose where you work, or you can, people starting to ease back, and many people are still coming back, but so others are still working in a remote situation. I think we're going to have this space where we'll have, sometimes everybody is on Zoom, and sometimes some people are in a room together and others are on Zoom. And I think we're going to need to be really careful about our etiquette there. And how do we make sure that we're not, being noisy and distracting? I think most of us have figured out the basic Zoom etiquettes, and putting your stuff on mute, and, moving the cat if the cat walks between you and the monitor, and those kinds of things. I think most of us have figured those out. But as we move into this space where there are going to be people in a room together and people on a Zoom together, how do we make sure people have the right, that they have a turn, and we don't get separated into this us versus them? So that's what I offer today, is maybe not a lot of answers, but maybe a lot of places where we need to be thinking about things. And I think the answer, if I were to offer one, is really about being intentional about your care of the other person. And I think of all of these situations, if you apply a lens that says, I am intentionally going to care for the other person in this situation, and my care for the other person may mean that I am going to mask myself to care for you. I am going to keep a distance to care for you. I am going to ask you what you want to show you that I care for you. And I think if we can approach it with a sense of intentionally demonstrating care for the other person, then I think we'll create some reciprocity there, and the others will also intentionally help create care for us as well.